In the heart of a small coastal village called Loto, nestled between the towering palm trees and the endless blue sea, lived a man named Muto. Muto was known throughout the village for his striking good looks and charming smile. But beneath his handsome exterior, Muto harbored a secret. He was not a man of honor. Muto was a gigolo, a man who pursued women not for love, but for their wealth. Every day Muto would position himself at the market, the beach, or the village square, always on the lookout for wealthy women. It didn't matter their age, status, or appearance. If a woman had money, Muto would woo her with sweet words and flattery. His handsome face and smooth talk never failed to win them over, and soon he would have yet another woman financing his lavish lifestyle. Muto's mother, Mama Kila, was no stranger to her son's ways. In fact, she encouraged it. "Life is sweet when you take money from fools," she would often tell Muto. Mama Kila enjoyed the luxury that her son's lifestyle provided, from the finest clothes to the most delicious meals. She even pushed him to find richer women, to aim higher in his pursuit of wealth. For years, Muto lived a life of ease. He drove the finest boats, wore the richest fabrics, and lived in a house more splendid than any other in Loto, all thanks to the women who loved him. But no matter how much he had, it was never enough. Every day, Muto sought out new, richer women to charm. One sunny afternoon, Muto heard whispers of a new place in the neighboring village of Numo, where the wealthiest people in the region gathered to trade rare and expensive items. The market, called Joli Bay, was known to attract only those with the finest tastes and the deepest pockets. Muto's eyes sparkled with greed as he imagined the fortune he could amass there. After waiting a week to ensure the market was bustling with activity, Muto made his way to Joli Bay. He dressed in his finest clothes, a tunic of deep indigo with gold embroidery, and a matching hat that made him look even more handsome than usual. As he arrived at the market, he felt the excitement of the hunt rising within him. Muto walked through the market, pretending to admire the wares, but his sharp eyes were focused on the women around him. He scanned their jewelry, their clothes, their shoes, anything that would give him a clue about their wealth. He knew how to spot the richest of the rich, and soon he found his target. In the middle of the market, Muto saw her, a woman who stood out among the crowd. Her name was Nalo, and she was unlike any woman he had ever seen. Nalo had a beauty that was almost otherworldly, with eyes that sparkled like the sea and hair that flowed down her back like a river of gold. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught Muto's attention. It was her aura of wealth and power. Nalo wore a necklace of rare pearls, the kind that only the richest could afford. Her dress shimmered like the scales of a fish, and her sandals were made of the finest leather. Muto knew at once that this was the woman he had been searching for. With a sly grin, Muto devised a plan. He pretended to trip, dropping a small bracelet he had brought with him. As he had hoped, Nalo noticed and bent down to help him pick it up. "Thank you, kind lady," Muto said, flashing her his most charming smile. "It's no trouble at all," Nalo replied, her voice soft and melodic. "My name is Nalo. What's yours?" "I am Muto," he said, bowing slightly. "It's a pleasure to meet you." The two began to talk, and before long, Muto had charmed Nalo with his wit and humor. They exchanged stories of their lives, Muto, of course, carefully crafting his words to make himself seem more important than he was. Nalo seemed genuinely interested in his tales, and by the end of their conversation, she had invited him to visit her home. The next morning, Muto set out to visit Nalo. She had given him directions to her home, which was located on a small, secluded island not far from Loto. As he approached the island in his boat, Muto's heart raced with excitement. This could be the opportunity he had been waiting for, the chance to secure his fortune. When he arrived, Muto was stunned by the sight before him. Nalo's home was a magnificent mansion, perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the sea. The walls were made of polished stone, and the windows were lined with gold. It was the most beautiful place Muto had ever seen. Nalo greeted him at the door, dressed in a flowing gown that sparkled in the sunlight. She welcomed Muto inside, where he was treated to a feast of the finest foods and wines. As they dined, Muto asked Nalo about her wealth, careful to sound merely curious. Nalo sighed and told him the story of her parents, who had been the richest traders in the region. They had died in a tragic accident, leaving their fortune to Nalo. She had been living alone on the island ever since, taking care of their legacy. Muto listened intently, his mind racing with plans. If he could win Nalo's heart, he would have everything he ever wanted. But he had to be careful. Nalo was not like the other women he had deceived. There was something mysterious about her, something he couldn't quite place. Over the next few weeks, Muto spent every moment he could with Nalo. He abandoned many of his other women, focusing entirely on winning her over. Every morning, he would send her flowers or small gifts, all paid for with the money he had coaxed from his other admirers. Every evening, he would send her sweet messages, telling her how much he enjoyed their time together. Nalo, for her part, seemed to be falling in love with Muto. She would smile warmly whenever she saw him, and she often invited him back to her island for dinner. Muto was pleased with his progress. He could see that Nalo was becoming more attached to him, and he knew it wouldn't be long before he could ask her for more. Muto's mother, Mama Kila, was thrilled when she heard about Nalo. "You've done well, my son," she said one evening, as they sat together in their fine home. "But don't stop now. You must go further. You must get her to marry you." Muto frowned. "Marry her? But I don't love her, Mama. I just want her money." Mama Kila laughed. "Love has nothing to do with it. If you marry her, everything she owns will be yours. You can always leave her later. Or, get rid of her." Muto shuddered at the thought, but he knew his mother was right. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. He could secure Nalo's fortune forever if he married her. And so he began to devise a plan to make Nalo fall so deeply in love with him that she would agree to be his wife. Muto pulled out all the stops to woo Nalo. He wrote her love poems, cooked her meals, and even learned to play the flute because he knew she loved music. He was always attentive, always saying the right thing, always making her feel like the most important person in the world. Nalo was enchanted by Muto's attentions. She had never met a man like him before, someone who seemed to care so much for her. She began to dream of a future with him, a future where they would be together always. One evening, as they walked along the beach on Nalo's island, Muto decided it was time to put his plan into action. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the water, and the waves gently lapped at their feet. Muto took Nalo's hand and led her to a secluded spot under a large palm tree. "Nalo," he said softly, looking into her eyes, "I have something I need to tell you." Nalo's heart skipped a beat. "What is it, Muto?" Muto took a deep breath, making sure to look as sincere as possible. "I have fallen deeply in love with you, Nalo. You are the most incredible woman I have ever met, and I can't imagine my life without you. I want to spend the rest of my days by your side. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Nalo's eyes as she looked at Muto. She had been waiting for this moment, hoping that Muto would feel the same way she did. Without hesitation, she nodded and threw her arms around him. "Yes, Muto. Yes, I will marry you." Muto felt a surge of triumph. His plan was working perfectly. Word of Muto and Nalo's engagement spread quickly throughout the village of Loto and beyond. The people were excited about the upcoming wedding, especially since Nalo was known for her wealth and beauty. Muto, however, was more excited about the fortune he was about to secure. Mama Kila was overjoyed. "This is wonderful news, my son. Soon all that wealth will be yours. But remember, you must make sure everything is in your name. You can't leave anything to chance." Muto nodded. He had already thought of that. He would convince Nalo to make him the sole heir to her parents' fortune once they were married. Then, when the time was right, he would get rid of her and live the rest of his life in luxury. Nalo, meanwhile, was busy planning the wedding. She wanted it to be a grand affair, with all the people from Loto and Numo invited. She chose a beautiful dress, ordered the finest foods, and made sure everything was perfect. But as the wedding day approached, she began to have strange dreams of the sea, of creatures with long, flowing hair, and of a voice calling her name from the deep. The day of the wedding finally arrived. The entire village was decorated with colorful banners and flowers. People gathered from near and far to witness the union of Muto and Nalo. The ceremony was held on Nalo's island, under the same palm tree where Muto had proposed. Nalo looked stunning in her wedding dress, her golden hair shining in the sunlight. Muto, dressed in his finest clothes, stood beside her, a smile plastered on his face. But underneath his smile, his mind was racing. He couldn't wait for the ceremony to be over so he could start putting his plan into action. As the village elder began to recite the wedding vows, Nalo suddenly felt a strange sensation. The dreams she had been having came rushing back to her, and she felt a deep connection to the sea. She shook her head, trying to clear her mind, but the feeling persisted. When it was time for Nalo to say her vows, she hesitated. Something didn't feel right. She looked at Muto, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes, a coldness, a greed that made her heart skip a beat. But before she could fully process what she was feeling, Muto took her hands and whispered, "Say the words, Nalo. Let's be together forever." Nalo shook off her doubts and recited her vows. The elder pronounced them husband and wife, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Muto leaned in to kiss Nalo, but as he did, a strange feeling washed over him, a feeling of unease, as if something dark was looming just out of sight. That night, after the celebrations had ended and the guests had left, Muto and Nalo retired to their room. Muto was eager to begin his plan to take control of Nalo's wealth, but as he sat beside her, something in her eyes stopped him. Nalo seemed distant, lost in thought, and Muto couldn't shake the feeling that she knew something he didn't. "Nalo," he said softly, trying to gauge her mood. "Is everything all right?" Nalo looked at him, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. "Muto, there's something I need to tell you." Muto's heart skipped a beat. Had she discovered his true intentions? He forced a smile and tried to sound reassuring. "What is it, my love?" Nalo hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I haven't been completely honest with you, Muto. There's something about me, something you need to know." Muto's mind raced. What could she be hiding? Was she not as wealthy as she had claimed? Was there some dark secret in her past? He tried to remain calm as he asked, "What is it, Nalo? You can tell me anything." Nalo looked into his eyes, her expression serious. "Muto, I am not like other women. I have a connection to the sea, to the creatures that dwell within it. I am a mermaid." Muto stared at her in shock, unable to comprehend what she was saying. A mermaid? That's impossible." Nalo shook her head. "It's true, Muto. My mother was human, but my father was from the sea. I was born with the ability to live both on land and in the water. But as I grew older, I chose to live on land, to be with my mother. When she passed away, I stayed here taking care of her legacy. But now that I am married, the sea is calling to me again." Muto felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. This wasn't what he had planned for. He had wanted to marry a wealthy woman, not a creature from the sea. He forced a smile and tried to hide his fear. "Nalo, my love, this is incredible. But what does it mean for us?" Nalo sighed, looking out the window at the dark ocean. "I don't know, Muto, but I do know that I can't ignore this part of me any longer. I need to return to the sea, at least for a time, and I want you to come with me." Muto's heart sank. Go to the sea? Leave behind all the wealth he had worked so hard to secure? He couldn't do that. But before he could protest, Nalo turned to him with a pleading look in her eyes. "Please, Muto, come with me. I promise, it will be the adventure of a lifetime." Muto swallowed hard, trying to think of a way out of this. He couldn't refuse her without revealing his true intentions. But if he agreed, he would be walking into the unknown, leaving behind everything he had worked for. Torn between his greed and his fear, Muto finally nodded. "All right, Nalo, I'll go with you." Nalo smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Muto. You don't know how much this means to me." But as Nalo turned away, Muto's mind was already racing, trying to figure out how he could turn this situation to his advantage. He had come too far to let his plans be derailed by something as absurd as a mermaid's tale. The next morning, Nalo led Muto to the edge of the island, where the sea met the land. She had changed into a shimmering blue gown, and her hair flowed down her back like liquid gold. Muto followed her reluctantly, still unsure of what to expect. As they reached the water's edge, Nalo turned to Muto with a gentle smile. "Are you ready?" Muto forced a smile and nodded. But as Nalo took his hand and led him into the water, he felt a sense of dread creeping over him. The water was cold and dark, and as it rose around him, Muto began to panic.